In this video, we're reviewing Honey Don't and beating the California desert heat with a grapefruit and honey cocktail called the O'Donoghue. Today on the Martini Shot. Hello and welcome to the Martini Shot, the home of movie reviews and movie-themed cocktails. Before we get into the review, let's whip ourselves up a drink. So the O'Donoghue is named after our lead character, Honey, and it's going to include a couple of the things that from the film we know she likes, mainly tequila and grapefruit. So of course, naturally, this is going to be a bit of a Paloma rift that we are going to be adding some vegetal and bitter notes to, most noticeably with Aperol, some hot peppers, and some sage. It's going to bring in a little bit of earthiness, a little bit of heat, and a little bit of bitterness while still being a very refreshing cocktail. Let's get into it. First things first, we need to get our glassware ready. We are going to be adding a chili lime rim, aka and probably more popularly known as tahini. So rim that glass with a lime wedge and then go ahead and coat as much of the rim as you want with that chili lime seasoning. Once you're done, go ahead and set that glass to the side and grab yourself a cocktail shaker. In your shaker, we're going to be adding half an ounce of honey, half an ounce of fresh lime juice, 2 sage leaves, 3 to 4 slices of your preferred hot pepper. I would recommend a jalapeno, but if you want things a little bit hotter, feel free to be adventurous. And 2 ounces of fresh grapefruit juice. Now, traditionally, a Paloma is made with a grapefruit soda rather than the grapefruit juice, but I feel like with the additional ingredients we're going to be adding in here, the brightness and the bitterness of the grapefruit juice is going to be a lot better of a pairing. And now for our alcoholic ingredients, first we're going to be starting with half an ounce of Aperol, and finally 2 ounces of tequila. Once you're done, go ahead and throw some ice in your shaker and shake to chill. Once you're done, go ahead and fill your prepared glass with ice and then double strain the cocktail into it just to make sure you get those pepper and sage chunks out of the final product. Then if you still have room in your glass, I would recommend topping it up with a little bit of sparkling water. And then maybe you can dress it up with a few sage leaves and a slice of grapefruit. And there you go, now you have the O'Donoghue. I've grown to really love this combination of the flavors that Aperol kind of brings to the table, as well as the flavor notes that you get from certain types of peppers. That combination of bitter and vegetal actually works really, really well together. You're getting a little bit of the heat, but it's not overpowering. You're more kind of getting the flavor of the pepper itself, and it's just elevated by the brightness of that grapefruit juice. You get a little bit of the bite from the tequila, and you get a hint of that earthiness from the sage, kind of similar to rosemary in a way. All in all, it's a very simple change to the original Paloma recipe, though I do think you will get a significantly different final product. It's going to give you a lot of familiarity, but it's also going to throw in a few little surprises for you, which I think are great to experience. Now that we have our drink, let's get right into the review. Can the Coen brothers just kiss and make up already? Look, I get they want to do their own things. Joel Coen wants to make one-for-one adaptations of Shakespeare classics, and Ethan Coen wants to make movies about Margaret Qualley having sex with women. Both are respectable artistic endeavors. Ethan's Drive-Away Dolls didn't receive the best reviews, but I actually had a decent enough time with it. It had a lot of that trademark dry Coen humor, a likable cast, and a pretty zany style of editing I quite enjoyed. His delve into queer noir cinema with his wife and longtime editor Trisha Cook certainly isn't going to be for everybody, but I'll watch anything if it's interesting enough. It's too bad this thing wasn't. Honey Don't left me frustrated because at times it manages to do a lot right. The performances are quite solid and I found a lot of the humor working on me, but this script is a freaking mess. Plot threads are left dangling, character motivations aren't fully explored, and the narrative as a whole ended up being incredibly unsatisfying. It doesn't help that the film has more or less ditched a lot of the creativity that Drive-Away Dolls had in the edit, leaving each scene at the mercy of the half-baked writing. Can't believe they managed to bore me with a movie where Margaret Qualley pegs Aubrey Plaza. Private Eye Honey O'Donoghue becomes caught in a whirlwind of trouble brewing in the dusty city of Bakersfield, California. People are winding up dead, others are going missing, and everyone is incredibly horny. Okay, that last part isn't really one of the issues. Honey soon finds herself looking into the local church, led by an impassioned and sex-crazed pastor, all while slowly falling in love with a cop named MG. Will she find a connection between the church and these tragedies? Will she manage to make love work despite being reserved? Is anything going to make any sense by the end of it? I feel like you can probably guess that last one. At least the acting in this is fun to watch for the most part. I really do think the star here is Chris Evans, who plays Reverend Drew Devlin, a not-so-subtle cult leader obsessed with widening his followers' minds, among other body parts. His cocky, neurotic, horn dog personality makes for a great stage for Evans to be truly entertaining for the first time in what feels like a while. I love him in a good, obnoxious role, and by God, that's exactly what we get. He's obviously a snake oil salesman parroting those loud evangelical type preachers, shouting about God's plan while also sleeping with every woman that comes through his church. Sure, the role is pretty much what you'd expect from a preacher in a gay crime movie, but that doesn't make him any less entertaining. I wish I could say that about the rest of the cast though. Margaret Qualley's Honey is the main character, but she's such a dry and uninteresting protagonist. Qualley does her best, but all her character is really relegated to is noir cliches with no real nuance. Her deadpan definitely works when it comes to landing the comedy, but as a character, there really isn't a whole lot to her. Aubrey Plaza's MG also feels underdeveloped, and when the character goes through a change later in the film, it doesn't really feel earned. Always good to see Charlie Day though. So a lot of the characters are not fully fleshed out, which I guess was intentional to match the artistic direction of the story, which is also not very fleshed out. It's a murder mystery, but it never really feels like we're getting to the bottom of anything. There's plenty of red herrings and misdirections, but everything just feels incredibly disconnected. From Honey to the church to a little side conflict involving Honey's niece Corin, you would expect these stories to have some kind of clever conversion, but that's just not the case. So many story elements get introduced, but ultimately don't play any meaningful role in the bigger picture. The church is pushing drugs and murdering people that might expose them, but not only does that hardly have any real impact on the main story, it doesn't even get resolved in a satisfying or interesting way. Honey's estranged father randomly comes into the story at one point, adding absolutely nothing to the character's journey or the mystery. The resolution to the mystery kind of comes out of nowhere and feels super confusing because the script just does not communicate what is happening super clearly. By the time the killer is revealed, we don't really understand their motivations and reasoning, and once the credits roll, I was left feeling so deflated because it made it seem like the rest of the movie was just one big waste of time. Most of the time you even forget there's a mystery, which, I don't know, seems like it should be at the forefront of your mystery movie. While the film does have its humor to it, it's playing it mostly straight-laced the entire time. It's obviously a contrast to Drive Away Dolls, which used its raunchiness more for laughs rather than eroticism. This film tries to be erotic, almost in a similar vein to Love Lies Bleeding, but it just comes off as awkward. There's a scene of Honey and MG getting handsy at a bar that tries to be edgy and sexy, but the way the scene is utilized felt pretty clumsy and whose only purpose was to get a rise out of the audience, both literally and metaphorically. Love Lies Bleeding's similar setup works way better because it feeds into the desperation and isolation that comes from living in a desert town. But here, it really doesn't mean much. That's my biggest gripe with this movie, there's just nothing to it. Honey Don't's odes to crime noir feel like parody, its eroticism feels hollow, and its mystery is misconstructed. Outside of giving us a few good performances and some decent laughs, I don't really know what the film was ultimately trying to accomplish. It isn't terrible, but it's a misfire that doesn't end up being greater than the sum of its parts. It had everything seemingly teed up for it, but it just couldn't land that swing. I never really was left wondering which of the Coen brothers was the source of the talent, but man, I might be having some thoughts now. For my rating, I'm giving this film 2 anal beads out of 5. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of The Martini Shot. If you saw Honey Don't, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments. And if you like what you saw here and would like to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me across all social media channels. Those links are down in the description below. If you enjoy movie reviews and movie-themed cocktails, be sure to check out my website, martinishot.blog. Until next time, thank you again for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Live deliciously, but please remember to drink responsibly.